everyone, it's Chef D, Rob D. Today I want to demonstrate a homemade barbacoa. And barbacoa is a traditional Mexican shredded beef that makes its way onto tacos, among other things. And it is a beloved dish of Mexico. The origins go, when I say homemade, I don't mean that we're making it at home, that goes without saying. But it's a dish that traditionally is a festival meal that takes a couple of days to prepare. The original barbacoa involved digging a pit, wrapping the meat in banana leaves. In traditions, it would be agave leaves, some sort of leaf dug in a pit with hot coals, and it would cook very slowly. Other versions make a soup out of the meat as it cooks, and that's used. Barbacoa is kind of interesting because while most Mexican food is completely indigenous, there may well be a Jewish link to it. And to understand that, we need to remember that barbacoa is usually made out of beef or goat or sheep, a meat like that, all of which are kosher meats, and that contrasts with many of the pork-based dishes that are so beloved by the Mexican population. Cortez was the commander, Hernan Cortez. He had a Jewish commander underneath him, and it is that Jew, according to Raul Guerrero, who is a Mexican journalist based in Hidalgo, it's that Jew who introduced sheep farming into that sort of central area of Mexico. It didn't really exist any before that. And the way, so let's begin now with our homemade barbacoa, and I'm going to be using two of the world's more ancient cooking vessels along with a blender to make this. And what we're doing, as I mentioned, is to make a sauce out of traditional Mexican ingredients. So I have some guajillo chilies, garlic, onion quartered. I'm going to be using some whole cumin seed, some oregano leaves, thyme leaves, and a touch of allspice. If you have cloves, you can use that. That is more in line with the traditional Mexican version. But there's at least a strong historical hint that this comes from the islands, part of this recipe, and therefore allspice is really quite particular. So we're going to cook with cast iron for searing the spices, the onions, and that sort of thing. It gives a deep, charred, caramelized flavor. We've talked about the Maillard reaction in previous videos. It's an important feature, and most people just love things that are brown. The meat, meanwhile, because we wanted to cook slowly, is going to get cooked in an old tin-lined copper pan. And people sometimes think of copper as a French cooking vessel, but if you go down into Mexico, you'll see very old hand-hammered cauldrons and this sort of thing. That's because copper is a relatively easy material to mine and to work, and therefore it has accompanied human society from thousands of years back in time. So let's get going. I'm going to turn the heat up to a high temperature on our cast iron, and once that comes up to temperature, I'll start searing things. I'm then going to once the chilies are done, I'm going to put on my gloves, which everyone has now because of the pandemic, to peel them. In other words, to remove the stem and the seeds. The seeds just add heat, but not flavor, and we're after the flavor element here. And at the same time, you don't really want the chilies to hit you. So talk about our sensitive membranes, that's definitely the case. So I'll begin with that. I'm going to move then to the spices so that I can grind them up and add them, and we'll puree all of that, and that'll go on top of the meat. So this pan is heating up. I'm going to begin now to cook in the cast iron, in the copper. Add just a little bit of vegetable oil. And what's nice with a tin-lined pan is that it is naturally anti-stick, and at the same time it allows that Maillard reaction to work. In our modern Teflon-coated pans, those are hydrophobic. They don't like water, and so you'll often have a bead of water, sometimes smaller than you can see, underneath your protein, and that's why it's a lot harder to get a good golden brown coloring using a cast iron pan. With the traditional tin lined pans, you want to make sure that you Don't overheat the pan so as not to melt the tail. All right, now I'm going to begin to sear the beef. I've got a pound here of some Angus. If you're not restricted by kosher rules, you can find larger chunks of something like a chest meat or something like that. And I'm just going to let that go on a nice slow heat. This is now plenty hot. In order to not get these chilies on my hand, I'm going to go ahead now and just begin using tongs. And I'm starting in this order to make it simple because these need to both char and then cool down. I'm then going to move on to the onions and the garlic, and finally after that just to the spices at the end because they'll need the least amount of time to come up. I'm not sure if you're able to see this on your screens, but there's a little bit of smoke rising up. Yeah, and that actually re-enlivens the flavor-carrying oils and the capsicums in the chili peppers. And this, you've seen this in a number of cooking venues and shows and some of my videos as well. This really, it's a simple step. It just takes a couple of seconds, but it will transform your spices. And even, sometimes if you're using just already store-bought ground spices, even then it can sometimes bring them back to life. So these don't take too long, and they'll begin, some of them to puff up a little bit. As you can see from here, it's actually puffed up. I'm going to leave that just a little bit longer. Oh, that's got some nice color. Let's get some fan. I apologize for the noise. Alright, that's puffing up nicely. And the puffing is not necessary, it just shows that the air inside is heating up and therefore it's expanding. But it's not a bad clue to check the surface of the chili. With these guajillos, they're really dark to begin with, so you have to monitor, often with the nose, to make sure you're getting a beautiful toasty smell, but not overcooking them. This is really, it's beautiful the way it's puffed up as well. So I'd say these are now done. They'll get an opportunity to cool off, so that'll be easier for me to remove the seeds. So I'm going to throw in our onion and garlic here. And while the onion will clearly take longer because it's so little, I'll just throw the garlic in also. And then when it's ready, I'll be able to take that out as well. Check on my beef and give that a little bit of a stir. With this, you don't want to burn it because we're making a relatively small amount of sauce. If we're making a very large pot of, say, chili sauce, it's okay to get a little black on here because the volume of it is going to give the depth, but not the bitter flavor of the burnt. But either way, you're going to be good to go. And when I say like a little color, let's just take, it's definitely very hot in here. You know, we're not talking about really deep color, and it doesn't actually take that long. We're just hurrying up those caramelization processes. Okay, fantastic. My larger ingredients are at this point already all charred, and I have turned off the heat on the cast iron pan. There's still smoke rising from it. It has enough residual heat, which cast iron does, to allow me to toast the things I want without causing harm. I'm going to begin with the ingredient, of course, it takes the most time, which is going to be the cumin seeds, as it's called, or comino. And we're just going to do a teaspoon or two. Throw that in the bottom. I'm going to follow that now with the oregano. And you can see this just smoking right away. Maybe just a touch more. It's a really unique smell. If you grew up in the East Coast or any place where autumn leaves were cooked, you'll be familiar with the smell. Very similar. A dash of thyme. I'm just going to shake this and take it off the heat right away, and we're going to put it into our spice grinder. Got a pan out of the way. Stir the beef at the same time. It's getting nicely browned. All right, now I have my chili peppers. They cool down enough. I'll break off the top of them. And the dried seeds are just going to brush right out. because they've also been toasted. You can sort of crumble it a little bit if you want. I'm going to throw that into the blender, and I'll proceed with all of these chiles. Again, these are guajillo. If you have an ancho or some other sort, it's okay, right? Again, what I really want people to do is feel a certain freedom in their cooking, which will allow you to just have fun in the kitchen while you feed your families and yourselves and your friends. So we've got all of these seeds out. That one I've got it already. My spices in the spice grinder have already been ground up. I'm going to throw them into the blender. And I'm just going to put a couple cups of hot boiling water from my Instant Hot tap into the blender. Many of the traditional, now traditional barbacoa recipes, the ones not fit bag, would use a beef broth or something like that in here. I'm not using that. And a word for our vegetarians or vegans. The sauce in the recipe, apart from the meat, is something that you can do with jackfruit, which naturally shreds. And if you cook the jackfruit in the oven for a long time in your traditional sauce, you're going to imbue those fibers with a lot of the richness of flavor and that Mexican taste profile that we want. So let's begin just to puree it. On low setting, always good to start with your blender low so that nothing splatters. And then we're done, that's it. So one of the things I really want to encourage people to do is that when you're cooking, it is a full body experience, and you want to use your senses to help benefit you in cooking. So take a smell, see what you have. Whoa, that is intense and beautiful. Some people will add a little bit of vinegar to the recipe, and I have some lovely apple cider vinegar in here, and I'll just add a tablespoon or so to it. Here we go. And now we're going to take a look at our beef, and once that beef is ready, we'll pour this on top, and we're going to put this into a nice low cooking oven at about 200 degrees, and we'll come back to this in about 4 hours. So we want to make sure that the beef is a beautiful golden caramelized color, and once you have that on a lot of the size, which I now do, we're going to add the sauce on top. Some people would make a marinade with this and leave it in the fridge overnight and then add a little bit on. This is the way I like to do it for here. To give a little bit more flavor, and since we're not using a sheep or goat, as would be one of the more traditional origins for the barbacoa, this is going to add some more full rounded flavor. So our meat is finished out of the oven. And I am now just taking it out of that braising liquid we made with the guajillo, chilies, and tomatoes. I'll pull the rest of it out, but what I want you just to see after it's cooked long at low heat is how easily that just shreds into pieces. And that gives it that really traditional Mexican way. And we'll just have those on some soft corn tortillas with traditional fixings. We've got some pico de gallo, we've got tortilla salsa, we've got radishes, we've got some refried beans, and we're celebrating Cinco de Mayo. So again, Batea Bone, enjoy, eat, stay safe.
Feliz día de Cinco de Mayo.